Hello everybody, Mac here. Welcome back to the show. So it is a new year, which means it is a new season of conventions, and that of course includes the big box store conventions such as the Target Geek Out and the Walmart Collector Con. And the Walmart Collector Con is what we had to kick off the 2025 season this past weekend. Thursday and Friday we had Walmart Collector Con 2025. There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of broken hearts, and there was a lot of swag to be had. So while we're waiting for all of those pre-orders that we placed to get canceled, I thought we would take a look at something that I picked up from the last Walmart Collector Con of 2024. So go ahead and leave us a like, because today we are taking a look at Mattel's Masters of the Universe Masterverse Vintage Collection Skeletor, Evil Lord of Destruction. And I am more excited about this than I thought I was going to be. As far as I know, this is basically a repackaging and maybe a little bit less of what was in that San Diego Comic-Con exclusive 2-pack that had the 40th anniversary He-Man and what I think they were billing as like the 40th anniversary Skeletor. And I believe it was this figure with just a few changes. Like I think the 2-pack skull for Skeletor was articulated, and I think the weapons were die-cast metal, just like He-Man's were. This is that same figure, but with a non-articulated skull and plastic weapons. This is also technically the first figure of the vintage collection, because while it is built on the buck of that 40th anniversary He-Man that we have, that 40th anniversary He-Man right here was not labeled as vintage collection, it was just labeled as 40th anniversary. You can see similarities in the packaging, but you can also see vast differences in the packaging. This is a darker red. You can see the construction, the design of the box is different. The window in and of itself is different. This is a much more reserved window to give you more room for the artwork. This is a larger window that shows you what's inside the box. So while that He-Man 40th anniversary kind of kicked off the idea of a vintage Masterverse line, this is the first one, but it is not the last. Because in that Collector Con that we just had this past weekend, we saw the next vintage collection figure, which is Faker. And Faker is pretty much going to be built off of the same buck. It's going to be He-Man with a lot of Skeletor armor. But it's Faker. I don't have a problem with that. I'm actually looking forward to getting a version of Faker in the Masterverse line. That would be my first one. Now, back to Skeletor here. As you saw, the packaging is different. It is that newer Masterverse packaging. Don't have a whole lot of artwork except for like the exploding rocks up front. We have the Masterverse logo up top. We have, barcode and legal on the bottom. On the back is what I think is really cool, because they really did a good job of mimicking the card back of a vintage figure. From the artwork to this little write-up right here, this old school classic looking Castle Grayskull with that little shelf coming out from the tower right there. His version of the Power Sword, or his half of the Power Sword, glowing with energy when they were originally calling it the Energy Blade. Yes, I think that's a retcon. And just like this cosmic backdrop of Eternia skyline, like very much the old original look, feel, vibe of Masters of the Universe, especially those early mini comics. And then down here, there's no power punch to display, to show off, but it does have, press sword into hand, press havoc staff into hand. And then we have a graphic of Skeletor over here that I love, because this is very much like the image of the 5.5 inch figure, where it was just Skeletor holding the havoc staff and his half of the power sword was just jammed into the ground. But then we also have this little light right up right here on this control panel that looks like it's in one of the towers of Grayskull. In 1982, Masters of the Universe took the world by storm with action figures that captured the imagination of people from here to Eternia. Today, the Masterverse celebrates the original designs as modern 7-inch scale action figures with the vintage collection. So that is very cool. So I already feel like I'm going to have a lot to say or a lot of feelings about the figure that's inside. I'm mostly excited though right now. So without further ado, let's get this package open. Oh, and by the way, time of recording, I checked on Walmart's website. This is still available for sale, believe it or not. So I will leave a link to this Skeletor in the description below. As far as I know, right now, it is still a Walmart exclusive, but it's also still available on Walmart's webpage. Now, without further ado, let's get this open and let's take a look at Mattel Masterverse, Masters of the Universe, Skeletor, Evil Lord of Destruction from the Vintage Collection. So here he is, the Lord of Destruction, out of his box, and putting the tape measure to him, we can see that he is nearly dead on 7¼ inches to the top of his hooded head. Our vintage version of Skeletor right here is a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of reuse going on, but there's also some new as well. The most obvious reuse is the buck right here. This is the torso piece that was used for the 40th anniversary He-Man. It's going to be the same buck that's being used for Faker, and I have a feeling that if this vintage line continues, this is going to be the buck that will be used for pretty much any male figure from the vintage line. Much like how the other Masterverse figures... Hold on, let me grab my other Skeletor here. Like, if you take a look at this one right here, how most other Masterverse figures have a muscular build, but is a little bit sleeker, a little bit leaner, that I think the vintage collection is going to stand out by having this bigger, beefier torso than the standard Masterverse figures do. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's nice. I think that's really cool. I think that's going to help the vintage figures stand out. Also, we can see that the arms are reused. These are the same demon arms that all of the other Skeletors that we've received have had. The head, let's talk about the head sculpt for a minute here. That I do like this head sculpt. I also really like the paint apps that they applied to it. It has a nice wash to it. It has some weathering to it. It really draws out the highlights, and I like the red painted in those deep dark orbs right there, or those deep dark eye sockets right there. And I do like, you know, the sculpt of the hood with this little bit hanging down in the back, just like the vintage figure. The only issue I have is that I think the head is way too small for this body. I really do. And I believe this head sculpt is the first head sculpt that we got with the first New Eternia Skeletor. I don't know if I can find that one at the moment because I've been using the helmeted version for that version of Skeletor, but I am 90% certain this is the same head sculpt that was used on the first New Eternia Skeletor, and it was small on that one as well. And to show you what I mean, there was a reason I had this guy sitting off to the side. This is the Skeletor, the New Eternia Skeletor that came with the Havoc Throne. And you can see that the head is designed differently. It's a little taller. It's much better proportioned. So if we pop this off, and then we take this one off as well, and then we pop this on, like, tell me that doesn't look better. Tell me that doesn't look like a better, more proportioned looking Skeletor, the head with this buck, that it looks better, it's sized better, the dimensions are just better, the scaling is just better. I do wish that this one popped out of the hood, but the hood and the skull are all one piece, because I would love to be able to use like this more matte textured hood right here to put on this one, rather than having this bright purple shiny hood that doesn't really go with anything else that he's wearing, because that head just looks fantastic on this vintage Skeletor. But let's pop it back. Let's put it back together so we can continue taking our look at this one. So the buck is from He-Man, the arms and the head are from Skeletor, the legs are your standard Masterverse legs that are pretty much shared among most of the figures that we've seen. And then we have the boots down here. Now, I don't have a merman yet. I do want to get one, and I don't know if these have been used for merman or not, but to me, this is the first time I'm seeing these like taloned demon feet right here. So these may be new pieces for this version of Skeletor. And the other thing that is new, well, first of all, let's take a look at this. That, like, I do love this texturing and these details right here. They've done a real good job on the texture of this figure, just giving it like this live organic feel to it, that even like you saw there's some like a weave in his hood, and there's also some texturing to his armor right here, giving the leather of it like a sort of like a, I don't want to say abrasive, but like a rough texture to it, which I like. It, like I said, it has that leathery feel to it. The armor is new. I really thought they were going to reuse like the armor that we've seen from some of the new Eternia figures, but it makes sense because, as we've said already, the buck is bigger, it's bulkier, it's beefier. You need new armor pieces to fit around the torso. So this is new. You can even see in like the design of the bat around the collar, around his neck, that is a new design as well. And further, I think the tassels hanging here over his loincloth, I believe this is a new piece as well, that I really like. That on the back, you can see the clips like it had on the vintage figure. Yes, we have the sheath for the, or the holder for his Sword of Power, but I really like that these tabs right here are very reminiscent of the vintage figure. The paint apps on it, I think, are fantastic. I already talked about the skull. I think that's beautiful. I love the wash. I love the detailing. I think it looks good. It just needs to be bigger. But I also like how they took the bones and they painted like a bright metallic purple over the bones and the gems, and also hitting all of the rivets in his armor as well. Some precise paint jobs right there. I really like it, even down to the rivets here in the tassels that are hanging down front. Nothing to really speak of on the back, nothing for the feet, but this work, I think, was really well done. Also, we have a bit of highlighting done in the musculature of Skeletor right here. That up front, you can see like at the highlights, there's a little bit of a whitewash going on, but then in his arms, you can see like a darker blue that is washed over it to bring out the musculature of his arms, and a little bit down here in the legs, but especially like here around in the abs and underneath the ribs right here. We saw this with the new Eternia Skeletor that came with the Havoc Throne. It is done, I think it's done better than what's on this one, but I'm just impressed that they put the wash on this one, and I appreciate that. I really like that. It gives this version of Skeletor a really good look. Now that we've gone through all of that, let's check out the articulation. That the head will do a full 360 spin. However, he only looks up about that far. He looks down about that far, and there's virtually no head tilt side to side. The arms will do a 360 spin. These are soft. They get up out of the way. You can see even as you're spinning the arm, they moved on their own. The arm will come up to 90. We have a bicep swivel. We have double jointed elbows that have some decent travel, but all that beef, plastic on plastic violence stops it from closing in too far. And then we have wrists that swivel and they hinge in and out. And that's kind of disappointing because both of these are weapon-wielding hands. I would have liked to have seen these hinge up and down instead of in and out. Even this one over here is an in and out hinge joint. Now, as far as torso articulation goes, you push this up, you can see he has that ab cut that He-Man has, that you can get some turn out of him. I wouldn't try and spin too much because the sculpt, it's all molded together, that it does start to sort of deform the upper part if you twist too far. But he can go back, he can go forward. He has some really good side to side. If you want to do a real waist spin, there is a swivel here at the waist that you see he can do a full 360 spin on that peg right there. The legs will come boom out to 90 real well. They will come forward fairly well as well. Base 90, maybe just under 90. And the reason for this is because, one, this will move and get up out of the way, but also the loincloth right here. I wish they would have painted the belt. I just noticed that. I wish they would have painted this belt, maybe made this belt purple, or even maybe this bright purple right here as well, instead of it all being black. But this loincloth is a soft piece of rubber too, and you can see that there's a cut right here, so that when you bring his leg up, it gets out of its own way. It will go back that far. We have thigh cut. We have double jointed knees that are a little sticky right now. And for as beefy as they are, we have some really good travel. But as I said, these are our standard Masterverse legs, so that shouldn't be a surprise. And then we have the boot cut right here. So that he has the swivel, ankles hinge back, ankles hinge forward, and then we have a forward-facing pin for some rocker. Now, as we just talked about, out of the box, Skeletor has a pair of weapon-wielding hands. Now, in addition to his weapon-wielding hand right here, he also has this open sort of clawed hand. And I love this, because this is a direct nod to the vintage figure, where if you remember, if you had Skeletor in the 80s and you were a kid, that you put the Havoc staff in this hand, and then because those old swords of power, the old halves of the power sword had that hand guard, you were able to slip the hand guard onto Skeletor's hand, so that like the hand guard was holding it on there, so it looked like he was dual wielding staff and sword, like Gandalf. But I really like that they gave him this like sort of like open clawed hand, really reminiscent of the vintage figure. And since you got an open clawed hand for the left hand, they also give you a closed fist for the right hand. Now we're going to be taking a look at Skeletor's accessories, of which he really only has two, and one of them being his Havoc staff. And there's nothing really to say about this Havoc staff. We've seen this Havoc staff before. The main difference between this one and any other one that we've received prior is that this one is a very dark purple, matching Skeletor's armor right there. And as a matter of fact, if we bring this one in, this is the one from the Havoc Throne set, you can see what I mean, that like this is much darker. You kind of lose some of the detail, so I'm kind of bummed about that. Whereas this one, the detail just kind of stands out because of the metallic purple. But even the other one that we'll be taking a look at, which is sort of a purple that's in between these two, you can see the detail better on this one. Something that that I find very interesting is that this Havoc staff and the one that came before it, the head will spin because it's just pegged on there in the bottom. This Havoc staff that comes with the vintage Skeletor, the head does not spin because it's anchored differently. It's actually shaped and molded in there. So I find that interesting that like this head doesn't spin. I don't know if they got a lot of negative feedback on that, so they decided to change it, or it's just something they decided to do on their own. Now, Skeletor has these gripping hands that you can fit the Havoc staff in there. And his wrists are strong enough that it's not going to, let me back him up so you can see, that it's not going to twist. You can see it's not touching the ground. But the original, I think it was the original New Eternia Skeletor that I had, because of how heavy the head is on the Havoc staff, the wrist just kept swiveling and he kept dropping the staff, like the head just kept going down. I like that this one, it doesn't have that problem. And something that is very unique to this version of Skeletor and makes him stand out is this, his half of the power sword. As far as I know, this is the only Skeletor that comes with his half of the power sword. This is the only way to get a purple power sword in the Masterverse line. I might be wrong about that. I don't think I am. I do think this is the only way to get this, because then when Faker comes out, we'll have the gold one, He-Man has the silver one, and now Skeletor has his purple one. Now, this is very reminiscent of the vintage one, almost to a fault. Now, it is it is sculpted more like that Alcala style, that there's breaks right here instead of these being molded in and attached to it. I do like it better when there's breaks here, like you can kind of catch a blade in there and maybe break it. There's also not much to speak of for the pommel, but I like this design for the Power Sword a lot. What I mean by being vintage to a fault is, since this is the only version of the Power Sword that we have that's in purple as of right now, time of recording, I would have really liked to have seen the wraps on this painted. Like we have the, I think it was the Battle Armor New Eternia He-Man, that the handle, the wraps of his version, his half of the Power Sword are painted a white, like, and this, it's just in that purple plastic. And I would have really liked to have seen this maybe painted in brown, like leather wraps, or maybe even like black or something. Don't get me wrong, I'm not upset that we got Skeletor's version of the Power Sword. This is a personal thing, more of a nitpick, really. But he can also get a grip on it very well, so that there you go. Now, Skeletor's ready to party. He has his staff. He has his Power Sword, also referred to as his energy blade at times. He's ready to go. For someone who Masters of the Universe is not one of my main collections, I have a lot of Skeletors. As a matter of fact, this isn't even the last of the Skeletors that I'm going to have. There's at least 2 more Skeletors that I know I want. I don't have a Battle Armor Skeletor yet, and I don't know how I missed out on that, but I have to get a Battle Armor Skeletor. And the second one, if you saw the images of the New Eternia Terror Claws Skeletor at Toy Fair, yeah, I need that one. Now, what we have here is, it's honestly hard for me to decide, like, which is my favorite Skeletor. I mean, obviously, it's the Frank Langella Skeletor right here from the movie, but he's kind of on his own tier. So then among these 3, on any normal day, I'd say it's this one, the Havoc Throne Skeletor, mainly because of that Alcala face sculpt and just the paint apps to the body. But this one, the vintage, is really, really giving our Alcala boy over here a run for his money. This one, I can't find, like I said, I can't find the Skeletor head sculpt for this one, because I pretty much put the cape on him, give him his pirate sword, put the helmet on him, and kind of use him as like a henchman of Skeletor, like a New Eternia Demo Man type thing. So I'm sorry, I don't know where his Skeletor head is at, but I'm pretty sure it's this one, to be completely honest. So which one do you like? This one is probably my least favorite, hands down. This one is my favorite, but between these 2, it's going to fluctuate between them. I just know it is. Like I said, I wish that I could put this head on this body and just call it a day. And now for size comparison, here he is beside Mattel, Masters of the Universe, Masterverse, New Eternia, Battle Armor, He-Man, and Masters of the Universe movie Evil Lyn. Here he is beside McFarlane Toys, Geralt of Rivia, and Ciri from The Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt. Here he is beside NECA Toys, Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless, and Flash Gordon. Here he is beside Hasbro Marvel Legends, Blade, and Daredevil Elektra. Here he is beside NECA Toys, Dungeons & Dragons, Warduke, and Grimsword. One more Masterverse comparison. Here he is beside the 40th anniversary He-Man, which is technically the beginning of the vintage line. He-Man's much bigger. At first blush, it looks like he has longer legs, but I don't think it's the legs. I think he just has higher boots where it connects to the leg. And finally, here he is beside Airborne and me from the G.I. Joe Steel Corps. You know, for not being a big Masters of the Universe collector, I think I have more Skeletors in my collection right now than any other action figure, and that includes Snake Eyes. Skeletor is iconic. There's no other way to put it. He was like the quintessential villain of the 80s. Whether it was the cartoons, whether it was the mini-comics, whether it was the comic books, Skeletor was the big bad. Now getting my hands on this one, I have to admit, this scratches a little bit of an itch that I had, because I'm not a big collector of the 5.5 figures. As a matter of fact, right now, the only 5.5 figures I have are 2 Super 7 Conans. And that's probably all I'm going to have until the Thundercats comes out for the Mattel Masters of the Universe Origins line. But not collecting Masters of the Universe Origins, this vintage version of Skeletor kind of fills in that gap that I had of something that harkens back to the figure I had as a kid. He has those larger proportions. He has that overly muscular torso that the other Masterverse figures don't have. And I think that is really cool. And I understand there are going to be some people that are put off by that like the more svelte, the more live versions of the Masterverse figures, still muscular, but not ridiculously overly barbarian proportions. And that's cool. I get that. I understand that. Even with this vintage line, I'm not sure I'm going to get every figure that comes out, but I have the He-Man. I'm definitely going to be getting Faker, and having this Skeletor is really cool. And I'm really curious to see what other vintage figures with this buck that we're going to see. The only thing that I'm worried about is, after seeing him next to that He-Man, if they're going to give all of the other vintage figures, like the Heroes, for example, those same fur boots that He-Man has, which means Skeletor is basically going to be like the short one of the line. The head is too small. You can't get past that. I do wish there was a way to swap hoods so that you could put the Havoc Throne Skeletor's head on this figure. I think that was the one that looked best as far as proportions go. But it's still really cool. It looks really good. The paint apps that they gave the skull with that wash, bringing out the detail, the red irises sunken into the black voids of his eye sockets. It does look good. I just wish it was embiggened a little. Also, finally being able to get a purple half of the power sword, that is a big, big plus for this figure. So that even if I still want to use that Havoc Throne Skeletor as my main, at least now he has his power sword. Well, look who made it to the end, you legend. If you made it this far, please give the video a like and consider subscribing while you're clicking buttons down there. If you already are a subscriber, I want to thank you for taking time and hanging out with me and talking toys again. If you like what we do here and you want to help the channel out, please consider becoming a member of the Steel Core. You can do so by channel memberships or by becoming a monthly subscriber to my Ko-fi page. Link in the description below. Core members get access to members-only exclusive videos, the Discord server, and eventually members-only live streams, all for just $1 per month. So until next time, my friends, play well, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, thank you for watching.